think, like, Ireland, not Northern Ireland, but Ireland that's not, under UK rule, can they curb this before it becomes, like, do they have more autonomy, I guess? So I know they're influenced a lot by Britain. I don't know how much, like, can they be spared?
No.
I guess
No. So Northern Ireland is under UK law, and they are actively actually moving migrants to Northern Ireland. I know that there was recently a huge riot where they burnt down 3 houses in Ballymena because a girl got raped by 3 migrant boys. They were underage too. They were all underage. But this is the thing, is that it's not like really focused on race or anything like that. The girl who got raped was a mixed ethnic, like half African, half Irish girl. I think the locals care about the Irish, and they're worried about what's happening to specifically underage girls. And the thing about the Irish that's a little bit different from the English culturally is that the Irish actually go out and riot much more than the English do. I think the English are a little bit more passive with this stuff. So yeah, you saw huge amounts of violence when that riot happened. And yeah, I mean, I would say that the entirety of the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland is all in like a really weird state right now. I mean, the other thing that's interesting in Ireland that I could highlight is that the Catholics and the Protestants have actually been joining in marches together to defend against this like governmental migration habits that they're bringing all these people in. So seeing these people who would have been murdering each other and fighting each other in the streets 30 years ago joining in marches is pretty wild, because if you lived in Ireland that would not normally be the case.
Wow, that's really interesting. I mean, every time there's a school shooting in the States, I go down the rabbit hole of like dreaming about leaving. And Ireland right now is like probably top of my list, but then there's this. So I don't know. There's always something that makes me think twice.
Yeah, I mean it's a really sad state of affairs here. I mean, this is the thing, is that I could get a work visa out in the U.S. and just move my family out there. I live in the U.K. And that's what I think we're going to have to do, to be honest. I think that the U.S., because of the way that your culture functions, I think that because of your constitution, I don't think that it's possible for what's happening here to happen in the U.S. But with that being said, you guys have to be like really, really, you have to pay attention to this, because I think that this is something that very could easily happen to you guys out there. I think there's little rumbles starting, and I feel like the UK is generally about 10 years ahead with social movements, whether it's people that we agree with or disagree with. So I would say you guys got to pay attention to what's going on in the UK, because it very likely could happen in the US as well. I think that you guys are safer because of your constitution and safety that it derives. But with that being said, I don't know. I'm severely worried about you guys too.
Well, what is it about the Constitution that you think makes a difference in this matter?
The Second Amendment.
So, specifically what you're saying is...
Actually, sorry, the First Amendment and the Second Amendment together. Yeah, because free speech in the UK is gone.
Are you saying we're safer because we have guns?
I mean, yes, partially, but also the First Amendment, you have it in your Constitution, free speech. We don't have free speech here. This is the problem, is that people that speak out about this get imprisoned all the time. They're in this country, in the UK, last year there were over 12 1,000 people arrested, put in jail for social media posts.
I thought you also said that there are demonstrations every day about this.
Of course, yeah. People are still allowed to protest.
Right?
But
So they are
you have to understand, though, people are freaking out, yeah. But I mean, there's people being arrested left and right over this stuff, too. There's lots of people being arrested during these demonstrations. There was a guy who just yelled at a police officer last year during the Southport. Part of it was a riot, but this guy wasn't at a riot. He was at a protest, and he yelled at a police officer about it. This is the guy, Axel Cabana, who murdered 3 girls in cold blood at a Taylor Swift dance party thing, and it's like a horrible story. And this older gentleman who was retired, he yelled at a police officer.
Wait, hang on a second.
And he got arrested.
3 girls at a Taylor Swift concert? Or
No, at the Taylor Swift dance party. It was like a little neighborhood thing. Multiple, I think 8 girls got stabbed, 3 were murdered. He almost beheaded one of the girls. They were like under the age of 10. Axel Cabana.
Who is that?
He is a Welsh choir boy from Rwanda. But that's how the government portrayed him as. They called him a Welsh choir boy and murders 3 girls. That's how all the news stories portrayed it. And then when his picture came out, because he became 18 right afterwards, everybody's like, yeah, Welsh choir boy. And just look his name up, you'll see it. You'll see the picture of him. But there was a guy, I mean, this is just one example of many, who he yelled at a police officer, and he was sentenced to 2 years in prison just for yelling at a police officer during a protest. And he ended up killing himself in prison because he had health conditions, all sorts of, heart problems.
Was that fellow who was the killer, was he born in England or in UK?
I believe that he was born in Wales, but he was the son of 2 Rwandan refugees.
So he's Welsh if he's born in Wales, right?
Yeah, of course. He's a Welshman.
Are you being ironic?
Sort of. But yeah, technically he's a Welshman, sure. I wouldn't say he's ethnically a Welshman. But, his background is Rwandan, but...
You mean his parents are Rwanda?
Wait, do you think that... Wait, are you saying that a Welsh person... Wait, so if I went to Rwanda... No, do you know what? If I went to China and I had a child there with my wife who were both not Chinese, would you say that I have a Chinese child?
I cannot speak to China. I can speak to America because I'm American.
Yeah, I mean, do you know what? America is a bit different because America is like a few hundred years old, and I actually think that, becoming an American is actually like a really great thing. But, I mean, like the English and the Welsh and the Scots have like a, 2,000-year history. So, I mean, it would be sort of like in the, I would say British. I would say that he was a British man. Yeah. I wouldn't say he's necessarily ethnically Welsh, though.
I don't know what ethnically Welsh is.
Well, they have a huge history that spans thousands of years. You can look up Wales.
I understand that. But you seem to be resentful, basically, that they called a black guy Welsh because he was black.
No, they called him a Welsh choir boy. They called him a Welsh choir boy in the news, which is bizarre.
Well, they were being ironic again. Is that's what they
after killing 3 girls and stabbing 8 others.
It's meant to be lurid. It's meant to be tabloid.
Okay, if the BBC is going to be our national news presenter and be a tabloid, then I don't think that they should be getting public funding then.
Why?
If they're going to be a tabloid, fine. Be a tabloid, do what you want. But if they're going to actually try to provide accurate coverage of the situation, then I would say that they probably shouldn't be getting national funding.
I don't know. There's BBC gets national funding, the rest don't. I mean, it's a
Look, they were trying to minimize public anger Okay, that is what
They
happened.
showed the picture of him, right?
It took them 3 months to put the picture up.
So the day after this happened, it's because he's a kid?
No, nobody knew what he looked like. Nobody knew who he was. Nobody knew anything for months.
Because he was a minor?
Yeah, he was 7. Well, he was 17. He turned 18 literally like a week after the.
Was that the reason why they didn't show the picture? Because he's a minor?
No, I think that they specifically didn't show the picture because of the public backlash, which did happen, which I don't agree with. I don't think that you should go out and riot in a horrible situation like that. I'm totally against that.
I think what Ewan is pointing to is a trend with the media, and that happens in our country also. In fact, it did yesterday with the school shooter yesterday, where the media will lie by omission when the narrative doesn't fit what they want the narrative to be. So,
I mean, it took about 5 minutes for me to find out that he was a transgender person.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, look at CNN and the New York Times, all their stories yesterday, they weren't talking about that at all. The other trend shoot.
5 minutes for us to know. That it wasn't even a day, it wasn't even an hour. And we got the manifesto.
Okay, so there was another shooter who was, this whole thing about every time there is a shooter and the left tries to say, oh, it was a right-wing nut, and the right tries to say, oh, it was a left-wing nut, that needs to end, because it's clearly more nuanced and complicated than that, and they're just mental people, but, so it doesn't need to be a political football, but when you are a media editor, you should be posing to your reporters and your journalists, what are the natural questions that your viewer or reader are going to ask? And if you're leaving out things like, by the way, there's a huge meta trend that first-generation immigrants to England are exponentially more likely to commit crimes against persons. And by the way, you fail to mention that in the story, but if the perpetrator was white, that's in the headline every single time. Then while you may not be directly purporting a lie, you're certainly crafting the narrative to fit the pre-existing narrative that you want to put out.
Thank you, Deriza. Yeah, specifically that. He eloquently said my exact
I don't know if
thoughts.
it's important that the person is transgender. It's interesting if it's important. Or, again, I don't know if it's important that the guy was black. Is black.
I mean, maybe it is. Maybe they're taking drugs that disrupt the natural endocrine systems in a person's body, and that affects more than just their physiology, and it affects their psychology.
Well, Elnorma was on a call, but even though he's on a call, for the rest of the room, I do want to clarify this as well. Part of the reason why it was important that we found out that he was the son of Rwandan refugees is the fact that he had been, we have an anti-terrorist group, and this is the failure of the UK government. It's called PREVENT, and it's an anti-terrorism task force that investigates people to try to stop things like this from happening. He was referred to PREVENT 3 times before he did this mass stabbing of little girls, a Taylor Swift dance party thing. And in his writings, when he was in high school, he talked about how the Rwandan genocide should have never happened, and that the genocide should have been here. He said that multiple times. This is something this kid got sent to PREVENT 3 times and refused to investigate it, and then he goes to a party with children and he murders 3 of them and nearly beheads one of them. To me, come on. This is important stuff to talk about. The fact that the government failed so miserably in their basic duty of care to look after these girls whose lives are, they're either dead, or the girls who got stabbed whose lives are forever changed. This is basic stuff.
Ewan, I don't know if you guys talked about this before I got here, but I don't think most people in America know what the grooming games are in the UK and in Europe. I certainly didn't until you and I actually talked about it at one point.
it's starting to be talked about. I mean, I've been noticing. I listen to a lot of like U.S. news and stuff like that. I like to pay attention to what's going on in the U.S. And I've been seeing like I think even Fox News talked about it. But I'm starting to see like a major shift of Americans starting to look in our direction. And I know it's not like everyone. I know that there's a lot of people that still need to be sort of educated on it. But I really, really think that the microscope is starting to be put on the UK here. And it's really important that people do look into this and you tell your friends and you tell your family about it, because it's really scary stuff. It's not the amount of violence that's going on here. It's not just the amount of sexual assaults or things like that, the rates of it that have gone through the roof in the past few years. It's also the fact that the government is trying to put people who speak out about it in prison any chance they get. So it's a really scary time here, and this is why I want to get the fuck out of this country.
Yeah, and the only reason I said earlier, Darice, if you weren't here, I had noted while Ewan was talking, the only reason why I know about it is because, I spend an unhealthy amount of time on Twitter. And there are a lot, there are a lot of accounts of people, UK-based people, Londoners, British folks, families who are directly impacted, families who film their family members being arrested for, either protesting against the groomer gang, speaking out, being directly impacted because of loved ones. And not only that, you have a lot of people documenting what they call the two-tiered police system, where you have a lot of natural-born citizens being arrested for just doing something as simple as praying in public. You can't pray in public in some of these areas, according to testimonies being shared. Also being arrested for things you post on social media. If you just speak out about, if you have a reaction to the groomer gangs, or this massive influx of migrants, they're being arrested for taking to social media and using certain words. And seemingly, these words aren't seemingly offensive, but the government has decided the citizens are not allowed to react. You got to be very careful. They police the language very heavily over there, seemingly. So you're right. The mainstream media isn't really covering this. You have to follow, kind of social media accounts, be on certain platforms, follow alternative news to really get the tea about what's going on, and it's very disturbing.
I kind of felt that hesitation in Royfeld when he was here. Like,
Yes.
he really wouldn't go there. It was super awkward because he acknowledged it existed, but he wouldn't go anything deeper than that. And then he chose to leave the room when it started getting real specific. It was really awkward. I really felt like the blanket of censorship on the way that he responded emotionally and the things he said. Like, he was like sitting up, being careful about every word. It was really weird. It sounded like talking to somebody from Saudi Arabia about women's rights or something. Like, it was awkward.
See, and I it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was really paying attention to the Royfield reaction as well. And I adore you, but it made me think well, maybe this is specific to maybe it's just really bad in the region where Ewan's at, but it's not really considered a common thought process by a lot, because Royfield almost felt like he was being attacked, the UK was being attacked.
He's black.
What does that have to do with anything?
Well, you're saying that he felt like the UK was being attacked. I would say he felt more like black people were being attacked. And I think that if there was any defensive tone in his voice, it was probably because he felt like, hey, it's not all black people. I don't think that I don't think he was defensive as a Britishman. I think he was defensive as a black man.
Well, but no, Nia had already had that conversation and addressed the room that she was talking specifically about Muslims.
I could sort of explain it to you, because it's actually not a skin color thing. I think that he's actually just much more left wing, and I think that there's essentially, just like the U.S., a major culture war that's going on in the UK as well. And it's like, by any means necessary, we need to win. So a lot of people on the left aren't willing to actually address the grooming gang situation, and they are the type of people that would actively cover up the victims of this stuff. I'm not saying he would. I'm not for that. I'm definitely not putting those words in his mouth, by the way. But in that case, like, I have seen tons of videos, and I know black men personally who would probably stand with the, flag wavers, waving the English flag, because that is their culture. That's what they were raised in, and they don't want girls in their communities to be attacked like this. So, I mean, it's not really a racial thing. It's more of a political differences thing.
Can I jump in for just a quick sec? I love Royfield's a great guy. I don't mean to disparage him in any way, but I think his hesitance and reluctance to address the issue head on is it illustrates actually a lot of the same themes and patterns that were discovered in the inquiry that was done in the grooming gangs cover up, and that the main one being that it's not always people. I think this is what's hard to accept, is that a lot of the worst things happen from people who are the best intentions. So it's not people like actively trying to cover things up, but there's a discomfort, particularly among those who are on the political left, with acknowledging ugly stuff especially when it really. I do think it actually does involve race, but not in the way that was suggested by my friend. I think the way it involves race is anytime there are patterns that emerge, people particularly on the left, are extremely uncomfortable with acknowledging it. And I just want to really quickly read some of the key findings from the report from that grooming gang. And if I go on too long, just cut me off and tell me to shut up. But the audit exposed systemic, long-standing institutional failures in safeguarding children, turning a blind eye to abuse rather than intervening. There is persistent reluctance to record or confront the ethnicity of perpetrators. In fact, data on it was often omitted or obscured due to fears of being labeled racist or inflaming tensions. Local data, where available, indicated a significant overrepresentation of suspects from Asian and Pakistani backgrounds, but this was ignored or downplayed at the national level because the data collection systems were weak and incomplete. And so I think that's the main issue here, and I think that's where we see some of that from our speaker who left the room.
Gotcha.
And that's the Casey report. That's the report that I was talking about earlier.
Yes.
Where it's the report that dragged essentially our current government kicking and screaming to doing a national investigation finally, after they had said no to 2 previous ones.
And Ewan, I commented in the chat on the knife girl. I know we're talking about 2 different places, grooming gangs primarily being in the UK and the knife wielding girl in Dundee, Scotland. My only point about that, Ewan, is I did a little bit of digging into it, and it looks like the guy who's recording the video, who's allegedly this migrant who's going after young girls, he was with his wife at the time, apparently reports are. He was the one doing the recording. In my experience, the guys going around scouting, cruising for young girls usually aren't the ones who are pulling out their phones and doing the recording. All I was saying there is that story and that image of that girl holding the knife went so viral so fast. Everyone superimposed their narrative that they wanted to be true on her, by the way, including myself initially. And I just think it's important to peel one layer back of the onion before we go too crazy with each story, because if we do that, it actually risks, and the facts turn out to be different, it actually risks undermining the real legitimate issues like the grooming gang story that we're discussing.
AJ, okay, so respectfully, I agree with you pretty much entirely. I agree that we have to wait for more information to come out with this, but there are 2 different sides going on at the same time, right? So I did do digging as well.
Yeah, 2 stories for sure.
And so one of the girls' moms made a statement out to people saying that there was actually 3 girls involved. That man did go up to one of them and like sexually touched her or, or came onto her or something. Yeah, and this is like the mom's statement or whatever. And that this had happened to them multiple times, hence why the girl was carrying the weapons. And that the third girl actually had gone to call the police. And that's why she's not in the video. But there were 3 girls involved in the entirety of it. Okay. And the girl who didn't have the knife and axe actually ended up in the hospital with a concussion and a major bump on her head because the guy physically attacked her.
Interesting.
There's a hospital report that comes out.
No, fair enough. And by the way, I'm not challenging it. I'm not challenging it. I actually don't have my mind made up on the story. So that's interesting. I didn't know that information. Thanks for sharing that. But I think you and I would both agree that most people are not doing the digging you and I are doing on this, and they see that knife out and they get really excited because it's like a great way to advance the narrative. And I just worry about that sometimes because it can actually end up undermining. But in this case, it might just be the case. I didn't have those facts, so thanks.
Yeah, I think having the facts is. Oh, sorry, you go, Sarah, David.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think that is one thing that Republicans tend to be really bad about, more so than Democrats, is we don't necessarily get all the facts before we express our fake outrage. You know, so I do. I just wanted to know. I think that's an important point because I see it way more so in the Republican Party than I do the Democrat.
Yeah, I just wanted to say as well with the girl with the knife and the axe. I think like part of the reason it went so viral in the UK, because everybody in the UK is obviously talking about it too. And there's like people that stream and talk about politics here that I listen to and follow. I think the reason why it went so viral is the fact that the overall message that little girls are carrying around knives and axes to protect themselves because the police won't do anything for them is sort of the overall message that's being spread. That's like the issue at hand, is that they don't feel safe, especially working class girls. If they're coming from working class backgrounds, they don't feel safe because the police will not respond to their pleas for help. And that's like what made everybody in the UK just like livid at that story.
Well, and honestly, this was just a tactic to shut Jarl down in the chat, which it did work because it appears as though he has left our presence. But he made the statement in chat that the murderers way more children than being raped in the UK. And just out of curiosity, because I enjoy challenging Jarl, I looked up the statistics, and the 2021 statistics for U.S. children murdered was just under 2,000. I think it was 1,750 or something. If I'm being liberal with that number, and I say, let's say on average 2,000 children a year are murdered in the U.S., the statistics on rape in the UK for minors is 60,000 over the course of... I think 5 years. So even if I said that same 5-year period, 10,000 U.S. children murdered, he was grossly wrong. So I think that says.
I'm seeing a trend about him being grossly wrong. Statistics. I'm sorry.
He's grossly wrong per capita.
Yes, per capita.
Per capita.
Of course, we're all the ones that apparently don't understand what per capita means, but, he's grossly wrong on it.
Yeah, Jarl was proven wrong a little bit left and right this morning, earlier in the room. He came up and wanted to be spicy.
It was pretty scathing, actually. I was like, damn.
I think his argument style is just to rouse the other side and not actually make a salient point.
Well, what cracks me up is how once he's proven incorrect, how he moves the bar like so belligerently.
Right.
Like America's 5 times worse than Canada, and then it's like, no, it's 2. It looks like it's 1.8 times. Yeah, that's double. Double is horrible. And it's like, wait a second.
Right.
Will you please acknowledge that you doubled the double already?
Just exactly what I said. Just meant to frustrate you.
Oh, it works. That's why I just shut up.
I think what I wish the Royfields of the world would understand is by continuing to refuse to acknowledge the elephant in the room, which is mainly there are significant cultural issues at play here. You're actually going to make life way worse for these Indians in Pakistan. I mean, look at me, right? Like for people who look like me. And there is a way of addressing this issue head on that can be done in a reasonable way that acknowledges, it's not all brown people, right? But there are some serious cultural issues at play here that we have to tackle and figure out how to address, and we're not afraid of calling it out. And if you don't do that, then the only people who are going to do it are going to be people who aren't going to handle it reasonably. They're going to be the people who aren't afraid of being called racist. And I don't think you want those people making the policy. So you neglect this issue at your peril.
Yeah, no, totally valid point. I mean, my next door neighbor here, him and his wife, they're basically fresh off the boat from Pakistan, and we get along great. You know, we have chats all the time. I would never judge all Pakistanis for what has happened with the grooming gangs in the UK. I think it's really important to focus on the actual issue at hand, which is that this specific group of men should all be prosecuted and deported and sent to prison and, punished and I would say publicly flogged at this point. But that wouldn't change my, view of my neighbor. It's like, well, obviously, I would never, think that way. So, I mean, you got to have a cool head with this stuff. You can't just, generalize everyone in these cases. And, I mean, this is the problem with, people like the woke leftists is that they generalize all white people, right? So you can't, that's the problem. That's the specific problem at hand. You can't call everybody the same thing if they come from the same background. You can't call all Pakistanis in the UK groomers because that's just not the case. But you have to at least call out that group. And most importantly, I think that what the people in the UK are angriest about, and I think that this is being misunderstood or purposefully, put in the media, is that I don't think that the ethnically English people are angry at the Pakistanis. I think they're angry at the government for actively covering this up for so long. That's the anger.
I mean, I think it's the good old saying of if you import to the third world, you become the third world. And it's not that Pakistani and, it's not like everyone who's from Pakistan are bad people, but again, it's like, what country are you coming from? What type of culture have you guys created there? And, in Pakistan, they have a culture where, rape is okay for the most part. It's highly accepted.
But Alex, I think that in this case, I disagree. So I think that what has gone wrong in this specific instance is the fact that the police did not enforce the law. They did not arrest these men and prosecute them for pedophilia on mass amounts of children. They actively covered it up. That is the problem at hand, specifically with the Pakistani grooming gangs in the UK.
But by the way, I just real quick, I think a part of this was also that we don't often mention is I think, Ewan, tell me if you disagree, but one less spoken about aspect of this is that a lot of these white younger girls were from lower classes, and there was some interactions with police that seemed to signal that they kind of didn't give a fuck about them, because they're like, what are you doing out there at night doing this anyways, and essentially like slut shaming them a little bit, and because they were so there's many layers to this story. There's also combined with fears of being labeled racism and inflaming racial tensions if it got out, like if they actually arrested these guys and went forward with it and the stories got out that there are these brown guys going around raping white girls, what that would do in the community. There's a lot going on that caused this cover up, and all of it is terrible.
Yeah, I did want to make a quick point, because AJ, you're 100% right, and I forgot to bring this point up earlier, is that as an outsider living in the UK, watching, you know, how everybody behaves around me and stuff like that, I feel like there's a distinct disdain for the English working class here, with specifically the middle class and like the upper middle class and stuff like that, where they really look down on these people. And I've heard people make these quips and here and there, like all the time, about working class people in this country. And that's the other issue too, is that there's a very definitive class system. Like for me, being from Canada, it's like my neighbor was like, you know, blue collar, and I came from like a more white collar family, and like, you know, the working class versus like the middle class all sort of like combined, and like we never really like, the class wasn't a huge thing. I mean, obviously in every country that it's still there a little bit, but in the UK it's very distinct. And I think that a huge issue with the grooming gangs is the fact that most of the victims were working class girls. So yeah, 100% correct on that.
Apparently they were working class from troubled backgrounds, who were perhaps already in the social services system, perhaps missing one parent or even both parents, also possibly with drug problems and so forth. I'm reading about this now. And they seem to have first been given drugs and alcohol, and I guess that's the grooming process, and then eventually abused in a sexual manner by,
100%. Yeah, you're 100%.
Take your point, Ewan. I see some of the comments in the chat voicing some frustration about the cultural component of this, because I think if we're being honest with ourselves, it's not just make sure to prosecute. There's another issue here, and it's something that is very difficult to grapple with. I don't know what the answer is, because I don't think immigration is going away anytime soon. I mean, I'm an immigrant, okay? And where I live, there's been, for example, a massive, giant influx of Indian immigrants who for the most part, are law-abiding, hardworking people, okay? I have nothing but great things to say. However, there are some cultural issues that are starting to become apparent. There is, for example, a nude beach that I frequent and that I've been going for years, and there are rules there.
Oh, I don't mean to dox you. You're in Canada, right?
That's right. Yeah. So
I'm from Canada. I know all about that nude beach.
Okay, so in recent years, I'm sure you've seen this yourself. There are groups, like big groups, of Indian men who come down to this nude beach, fully clothed. Okay, they don't even have a beach blanket, which signals to me they're not there to sit down and have a good time at the beach. And they do walkthroughs. So that they can, and then they stare, like totally without shame, just staring at the women. I've had to confront these men, sometimes while in the nude, and it's made for a funny scene, and tell them to put their phones away, stop taking photos, stop looking at these women. And women have come up to me, with me and my wife while we're there, thanking us for intervening. It's getting really bad, and part of it's like not even their fault. Like they're just from a completely different world. Like imagine you come from a world like that, and then you walk into a beach and there's like all these nude women just laying around. It would fucking blow your mind. So a part of me doesn't even blame them for staring, but at the same time, we've got to figure out as a society, how do we grapple with these significant cultural differences and issues? And step one is acknowledging that they exist.
I mean, I think, but I do, AJ, I think where things go off and where things go wrong is that I think that every country has, to a certain extent, a certain native culture. And I think that it's really important that that culture's laws and, it's important to enforce that stuff, right? We need to just kind of put our foot down and be like, that's just not how you do this here.
Yeah, and I think
just explain.
And I think the biggest hurdle to that is that this obsession with look, when my family immigrated here, we assimilated, and we were proud to assimilate, and it didn't mean that we have to abandon every aspect of our culture and language. We didn't. I still speak Farsi and Persian, but we understood that when you come into somebody's house and the rules of the house are you take your shoes off, that's what you do. And we're very grateful, very lucky to be here, and we're very happy to do that. So when that starts going away because there's some new ideology that's, well, no, there's no longer going to be shared unified values, customs, and norms. It's just everything goes because it's a beautiful multicultural place. I mean, that's chaos. So I don't know how to deal with this. A part of me is should there be training sessions at the airport when people come in?
No, and
letting them know this is.
I would say this, AJ. I actually think that all you need to do to fix the situation is, in the UK, for example, is just end. For example, this is a big one that could probably fix most of the problems, is end welfare for foreign nationals. We're putting billions of dollars into welfare for people who are coming here and going on welfare, which is crazy to me. You should be bringing in people that add to your economy, not people that become a net drain on your economy, right? So you close all those loopholes, and you fixed probably about 80% of the entire problem right there.
Yeah, and I'm also, a part of me is also wondering if the class of immigrant has changed in recent years. By the way, even amongst my own people, I've noticed a difference. I've noticed a trend in terms of the type of Iranian who comes into Canada. It seems to be of a lower class element that didn't exist before. It used to be harder to get into the country. You used to have to meet certain thresholds and hurdles to get in. And I'm thinking, is this a post-COVID thing where all of these Western countries, to make up for the labor shortages, just pumped their countries full of immigrants, and in so doing, brought in a different class of immigrant? In other words, low-skilled labor, essentially. And I think that might be part of it too. Something has shifted. And I'm including my group in that just so people don't think I'm trying to target any other group in the immigration policy in that respect as well.
Yeah, no, AJ, I think you're correct. I think it's Canada used to have, in my opinion, the best immigration system in the world. And Trudeau essentially changed the entire immigration system and allowed for loopholes, for example, the student visa situation where there were 400,000 or no, I think it was even higher. It's 800,000 students or something like that came to Canada in 1 year, and they were all for sham colleges, so they weren't even coming to get a degree. They were coming to work at Tim Hortons and work at low-wage jobs, which in their case they were making so much more money than where they would have made.
And Ewan, not to talk over you, but when you talk about those kind of immigration figures into Canada, you have to mention the total population of Canada, because most Americans are surprised at how relatively small the population of Canada is. It's, for reference, I don't know, it's I don't know, maybe this total population of the size of the New York and Boston region combined, and that's about it.
And by the way,
tiny population compared to
sorry to the room for. I have not at all wanted to shift the conversation to Canada. I know how much you Americans hate talking about Canada and other countries, but I was using it as an illustration for what I see be a cultural clash that I see everywhere. For the people in the chat who are saying every man stares, you just don't understand what the norms are at this particular beach that I'm talking about, because you're not there. When you have just picture a pack of 9 to 12 men fully clothed in jeans and long sleeves, walking up to your blanket as you lay there nude and just gawking at you. It's absolutely unheard of at this beach, and it's a massive problem. And it requires guys like me to unfortunately have to get up and police it to keep it under control, where I wish there'd be some other kind of enforcement mechanism for this kind of thing. I just don't know how to grapple with it, because you know what? Most people don't do what I do. Most people just keep their head down, especially white people, because they're so afraid of being called racist. And that's kind of why I feel more of an obligation to stand up, because I know the white people are scared to do it.
Yes, I mean, what I've heard specifically about Indian immigration into Canada is it's something in the order of 2 million people over the last several years. And when you talk about the population of Canada being somewhere around 30 million total, imagine 10% of the country was just imported from one specific region in just the last few years. What that does to especially housing stock in the big metropolitan areas. I've been reading about, this was a cliche in New York for many years, but a 1-bedroom apartment where maybe 7 people are living. And, when you talk about sort of, to be crude, the horny Indian boys who are going to the nude beaches to ogle women, like, they may be this is true in India also, just young men. They have no privacy to themselves because they're in such overcrowded housing conditions. They're just fucking young and horny. And there was nothing like that in their society. And they can just go and sort of, get their jollies by just ogling women on the beach. And it's definitely a cultural clash at best, and I'm also jealous because there are no nude beaches in my state. I know there are some in the U.S., but as someone who respects the work of Dr. Jack Cruz, I wish I could sun my nether regions, but I don't have any private outdoor space. I live in a condo community.
Yeah, it's been a 326% increase as of the most recent numbers I have is 2023. It's only gone up since then.
Increase what? Where?
In terms of the migrant population, annual immigration trends from India in Canada. So I think permanent residents, it was like 32,000 in 2013, and then it went up to 139,000 in 2023. Projected growth, it just keeps going up, 148,000, more than 4 times.
They're saying that it's too risky to go out because, like, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know who's going to be pulled in. That's the issue. Like, it's not that...
Trump said permanent residents aren't allowed to leave the country, right? That's fucking insane.
It is kind of I don't know if he said that, but I'm just saying what my lawyer told me. My lawyer was like, hey, we recommend don't leaving the country for a little bit, so just so that until you get a citizenship, and then you can, like, go ahead.
Not just conservatives, but Republicans, MAGA Republicans, crying because, I shouldn't say that, that's too pejorative. I'm fascinated by their outcry because a person was fired by his employer for behaving in a way.
Resigned.
Oh, I'm sorry. Julio said that he was pressured to resign. It was under duress. That this person experienced consequences for behavior that he participated in online, things that he said online. It's like, are y'all new to being Negroes? Dude, like when did